What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. I got part two coming at you today of the Stitch Impossible double feature. Previously, I covered the Lilo and Stitch live action remake on part one. You can check out that episode now on YouTube, as well as listen to the audio version on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. But today, for part two, we have Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, which is currently in theaters right now, starring Tom Cruise. This is the final installment of the Mission Impossible franchise. A couple reminders at the top of the episode today. As always, you can watch this show every week on youtube.com/the cinematic reviews, as well as listen to the audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. There are no news or reactions for this episode, so we're going to head straight into our featured film, which, like I said, is Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. We're bidding farewell to Ethan Hunt, our lovable character played by Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible franchise. This is a bittersweet moment for all of us Mission Impossible fans, including myself, who has grown up with this franchise since it first came out back in, I want to say, 96. And now in 2025, we've got the eighth and final installment currently in theaters. It's looking like it's not doing so great in theaters. I believe it's at $350 million worldwide, off of a $400 million budget, which has been marked as one of the most expensive films in movie history. It is going up against Lilo and Stitch, which I talked about on the last episode, which is just completely dominating the box office right now. It just crossed over 600 million worldwide, with about, I think it was like 280 million domestically, which is really great for the film. I believe this movie has really only gotten up to about 150 million domestically, which is a shame. I'm sure most people are out seeing Lilo and Stitch, and now with the John Wick spin-off movie Ballerina coming this weekend, Mission Impossible is in for a rough ride, I think. I don't see it reaching that $500 million mark, which I'm sure that they would love to do. I don't even see it breaking even at 400 million, maybe. This will probably get rushed over to Paramount Plus so that people at home can watch it, and probably hit, Fandango stores, the Apple store, Amazon store, all that, so that people can purchase it and watch it at home, and maybe they can recoup their losses with the digital purchases as well as the physical media once that hits the shelves in stores. If you're thinking of, if you're feeling deja vu like I am, this is because back in 2002, the animated Lilo and Stitch went up against another Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report, which was directed by the awesome Steven Spielberg. I really loved the Minority Report movie. It actually defeated Lilo and Stitch at the box office back in 2002, by a fair margin, I think. And now Stitch has come back for revenge in this year's box office by just completely wiping the board clean of Tom Cruise and anything that he can do to rally up the troops for this box office. But regardless of the numbers and the dollar amounts, I still really enjoyed this film. It's not the greatest, it's not the best installment of the franchise, but it was still a lot of fun, a lot of great action sequences. Tom Cruise is phenomenal, as he always is. We get a really good farewell to him. Was it the one that we were hoping? Depends on who you ask. Me, I have my own thoughts on how this franchise should have ended, and I will give my thoughts when we get to that point in the episode. But for what Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise decided as a ending to Ethan Hunt, I think it was pretty good. We don't see him die on screen, which leaves the door open, of course, for even other Mission Impossible films or TV series or whatever they decide to do. I think that's really unfortunate. I was hoping that they would close the door and just kind of bookend this franchise so that he can move on to something different. But with them leaving that door open, there's always going to be that little kernel in his head that's going to say, hey, why don't we just throw out another Mission Impossible movie? People seem to love it back in the day. That's not what we want. at least me personally, I want a start and finish to these franchises. But they seem to be coming back more of a sequel. So I am not leaving it off the table for them to come back with Tom Cruise starring again in a Mission Impossible film. We'll guess that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm not totally ruling it out, even though this is how they're marketing the movie as this is the last time Tom Cruise will play Ethan Hunt. But the way they ended the movie, I don't see um, them completely ruling it out. I could see them maybe 5 years down the road. We could get one more film that kind of gives Tom Cruise that moment of handing the torch to somebody else. That was what we were supposed to be getting. If you remember in Ghost Protocol with Jeremy Reiner's character, he was supposed to be the new quote unquote Ethan Hunt in this franchise. But here we are, 3 movies after that, and he is still leading the charge in this Mission Impossible franchise. But still a really good movie. Most of the cast is back. They were phenomenal, especially Luther, played by Ving Rhames, who I'm going to talk about a lot on here. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. So we're just going to roll through the cast. Ethan Hunt, of course, played by Tom Cruise. He's been playing it ever since the first film came out in '96. And he just kills it again. I love the stunts that he does in here. I love his acting, the emotion, and everything that he brings with this character after almost 3 decades worth of movies and publicity that he's done for this character. Aside from Maverick and Top Gun, this is probably what he's going to be remembered for, is these Mission Impossible films. Me personally, I'm always going to remember him as both Ethan and Maverick. But there's other people like my sister who is of this new generation of kids. She's probably going to remember him most for Ethan Hunt because she loves these movies. She is a little bit into Top Gun, but I think kids today, or at least these past couple generations of kids, are more connected to him as Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible versus somebody my age or the generations before me. They're going to remember him most probably for Maverick and Top Gun. Either way, they're 2 great performances, 2 great franchises. But he is phenomenal actor. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. Definitely in my top 5. I don't think he's in my top 3 anymore. But he is in my top 5, and I absolutely love Tom Cruise and what he's done with not just this franchise, but he's saved movies, as he said back during COVID. He's the one that brought movies back to theaters with Top Gun Maverick. He is saving the stunt world of Hollywood. He wants to keep doing stunts until he's 100. If you haven't seen those interviews that he has been doing for promoting this film, he really wants to keep acting as much as possible. He's willing to even die on set. I hope that never happens, but if he keeps pushing his body the way he is, he may end up going down that route. Moving forward, like I said, Luther, played by Ving Rhames, who is also connected to the Lilo and Stitch conversation. He played the voice of Cobra Bubbles in the animated movie, and now here he is going up against Stitch once again. I find that hilarious that they are meeting once again in this box office match. I love Ving Rhames. He is, aside from Ethan, he's probably my second favorite character. Unfortunately, he ends up conducting his final mission in this film, and he is killed off towards the end of the film in a pretty awesome manner. He goes out doing what he loves, what he's good at, and that is defusing bombs. We get that very intense moment in Fallout, if you remember, where he is having to defuse one of the 3, or was it one of the 2 bombs in Fallout alongside Michelle Monaghan. And now we kind of get a kind of part 2 to that, where he is diffusing this massive explosive device underneath these catacomb-like area where he is giving himself treatments for cancer. And he kind of acknowledges to Ethan this is his final mission, and once he completes his mission, that'll be the end of it. Um, Very emotional scene between him and Ethan down there in the catacombs, where he is basically basically ordering Ethan to leave him behind and let him finish his mission, so that Ethan can finish the overall mission of taking down the entity. So very emotional and very powerful moment between those two that we've been watching on screen together all these years with this franchise. It was really really awesome to see that go there. Um, Speaking of favorite characters, we have another one of mine, which is Benji, played by the hilarious and awesome Simon Pegg. We were first introduced to Benji back in Mission Impossible 3, and now all these years later, he is now on this final mission with Ethan. I was really expecting him to die because of what they kind of left him to do towards the end of the film. But he soldiered through it and he survives. Do I agree with that? Not really. And I'll talk about that more in one of the segments today where I talk about all these teased deaths throughout the movie. But speaking on his performance, I absolutely love Simon Pegg as an actor, as a person. Um, he is tremendous once again as the Benji character, and very smart. He's kind of the audience in a way, where he is along for the ride. He loves Tom Cruise. He loves Ethan Hunt. He loves going on these missions, and he'd do anything that Ethan would ask. So absolutely love Simon Pegg in here. We have Grace returning as well from Dead Reckoning Part 1. She's played by Haley Atwell. She's really been an up and coming actress now. I know her biggest role was Peggy Carter in the Marvel Universe, and now she's jumped over to Mission Impossible as Grace. She's kind of a love interest to Ethan, but not really. They didn't really lean into it like they did with Ferguson's character back in Fallout and Rogue Nation, as Ilsa Faust. They kind of teased it a little bit in Dead Reckoning, but with this one, I don't think it was really, at least in your face. But you could tell that maybe, on the sidelines or behind the scenes, that they did have kind of a romantic tisk here or there. But they definitely did care about each other. And I love the scene that she has at the end where she is basically responsible for saving all of humanity by using her skills as a thief to trick the entity and going into the box that would eventually fry it for eternity. I thought that was a great callback to her skills and all that. So she's fantastic. We also get Paris, played by Pom Klementieff, who she is also from the Marvel universe as Mantis in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. She's great as well. It was looking like she was going to die in Dead Reckoning. And I honestly thought she did die. So I was very surprised to see her on screen in this installment because I was pretty sure she was bleeding out on that train at the end of Dead Reckoning. But maybe I misinterpreted that. Maybe I missed it in the trailers that she was coming back. But I was very surprised to see her on screen. She ends up living through this and helping out the team, but I really like her. We also get the return of Gabriel, who is kind of the antagonist of both this film and the installment prior. He is played by, I'm going to butcher this real hard, Isa Morales. Not too familiar with him. I've only seen him in Dead Reckoning in this film, but he's very good as the antagonist. I love his kind of demeanor and the way that he performed the villain role in here. He wasn't like psychotic or, well, I guess he was kind of psychotic in a way because he had the entity speaking to him, but he wasn't like the Joker psychotic. He was more of suave psychotic, if that makes any sense. He was very calm. He didn't really get out of hand or out of control until the very end, where we get that awesome plane sequence where Ethan is climbing around the planes. Right there, you could kind of tell that Gabriel had enough, and he just kind of lashes out at Ethan until he eventually dies at the end of this film, which was kind of a given with the way that Dead Reckoning was setting up his character. The only way to really end it was for him to die because he was just so corrupted by the entity and so brainwashed that the only way out was death, really. We get some other notable mentions from previous films. We got President Erica Sloan, who we first was introduced in Fallout as the CIA director. She's played by Angela Bassett. She is now the president of the United States, which is awesome. We also get Kitchers returning. He's played by Henry Zenny. He was first introduced in Mission Impossible, and then he came back for Dead Reckoning, which was an awesome moment there. And then now he's here once again. He's been a really nice reminder of that first film. I feel like when Ghost Protocol came out, and then eventually Rogue Nation and Fallout, I think the first film kind of got lost in the dust there, along with Mission Impossible 3. So it's really cool to see Kittredge back at it, and kind of bookending this franchise with him from where it began, essentially. So that was awesome. We also get William Dunlow, who is also from the very first Mission Impossible film. He's played by Rolf Saxon. If you don't remember him, was the guy basically watching over the knock list that Ethan had to essentially steal back in the first film. He's the one that came in with the poison coffee and was constantly throwing up, and then eventually sees that knife on the desk and realizes that somebody was in there. He eventually gets reassigned or fired, however you want to do it, and banished to Antarctica. And it was really cool to get that knife back as a reference to the first movie. And then he plays a pretty big role in the mission to take down the entity, because he kind of decoded and figured out how to destroy the entity in the actual location that they needed to go to. So it was really cool to get him back after all these years. I totally forgot about him. They didn't really tease that in the trailers as well. So I'm really glad that they kept that out, and it was a big surprise for me to see him on screen. More callbacks to the first movie, but not as spot on as the other two. We got Bridges, aka Jim Phelps. Not that Jim Phelps, but Jim Phelps Jr., played by Shea Wiggum, who we were first introduced back in Dead Reckoning Part 1. He was chasing down Ethan during that film, and now he is chasing him once again, but is revealed that he is the son of Jim Phelps, who is played by Voight in the first film. So a lot of callbacks from the first film, which was really great, kind of bringing that back to life and shining a spotlight on that to kind of bookend this franchise, which was awesome. I love that reveal. I mean, it makes sense that Shea Wiggum would have a personal vendetta against Ethan because Ethan killed his dad, but for good reason though. And he convinces Shea Wiggum that, and they end up kind of shaking hands and burying the hatchet, so to speak, towards the end of the film, which was awesome. And then the last one, this isn't a callback to anybody, but I wanted to mention him because I love this actor. But we have General Sidney, who is played by Nick Offerman, which was a great addition to the cast. That's already awesome. I love Nick Offerman. You probably remember him from Parks and Recs. He was previously in The Last of Us show on Max. And now he is part of the Mission Impossible franchise, which is really, really awesome. He unfortunately passes away, saving President Sloan from a bunch of moles within the government. But he was great in there. I love seeing him in this franchise. So that's kind of a bookend of the cast. Phenomenal cast. Love all of them. Great performances by all of them. My biggest hang up would be the story. I don't think it was. It's kind of. I was expecting more, I guess. I'll be honest. With how Dead Reckoning Part 1 set this finale up, I was expecting, this to be a bigger, more emotional bookend to this franchise. But unfortunately, I just didn't have that emotional punch like I was hoping I would. The only emotional part I felt was when Luther died, because he was one of my favorite characters, and then being with him all these years. I think the main reason why it didn't work for me was because of all those death teases. We had Benji get teased. We had Dunlow's wife, and then Dagus, who is one of the other. He's kind of the partner to Shea Wiggum's character. We also get Nick Offerman's teased, but he eventually does pass. We even get a couple of Ethan teases. I mean, that's a given. It's a Mission Impossible movie, so they're always going to tease Tom Cruise. But I put that on my list because I think a part of me was kind of hoping that they would just kill Ethan off and to give it a really emotional sacrifice after all these years. You know, he's always preached about willing to do anything it took to save the world. He wouldn't be able to rest until he saves the world. Similar to, I kind of compare it to Robert Downey's performance as Iron Man in the Marvel universe, where he couldn't sleep until he defeated Thanos, which eventually led to his death. Um, and I guess I was kind of expecting or hoping the same thing to do with Ethan, where he was going to make the ultimate sacrifice to save the world once and for all, and that's to sacrifice his life and unfortunately pass. You know, granted, this is Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise isn't going to want to sign up for a project to where he dies. But I think it would have had more of an emotional punch to a lot, not just general moviegoers who have been following these newer installments of the franchise, but to fans like me who have been watching this since the very beginning. Um, Seeing Ethan Hunt make that ultimate sacrifice on screen would have been a gut punch, similar to Goose dying in Top Gun. Um, but I guess they decided against that. That'd be a question I would love to ask Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise himself if I ever got the chance. You know, like, was it ever considered killing Ethan off? How far did you get down production before you decided not to do that? But I think it was kind of a miss for me with them not killing Ethan. You left the door open for more sequels, even though you marketed this to be the last one. And now with Ethan staying alive, everyone's going to have that little nugget in the back of their mind saying, Ethan's not dead, Tom Cruise isn't dead, so we could get another Mission Impossible movie in the next 5 to 10 years, even though they marketed this to be the last one. Um, Maybe that's just me being not really trusting in Hollywood right now because they seem to be just rehashing everything. Um, which is why I was really, really hoping for Ethan to just bite the bullet, make the ultimate sacrifice, and then just really end this franchise, and never in maybe in 20 years just reboot it with a different actor, or continue off with some other character within that universe. You don't necessarily have to do a full on reboot, but that's unfortunate. And then also on my list was Luther, which they teased it a lot. They did. Commit to that death, um, which was very emotional. Like I said, the Benji one, I was really sure that he was going to die. And it would have made a lot of sense, you know, losing Luther and then losing Benji. That would have crushed Ethan probably into retirement. And that would have been a logical step to take too. But since Benji's alive, Grace is alive, Wiggum is still around, he is still part of the IMF. I think if they would have committed to Benji's death, it would have really retired Ethan, and that would have been a really great ending versus killing him off, which I probably prefer the retirement one because I don't want to see Tom Cruise die on screen. Um, they probably could have went the Daniel Craig Bond route where they do kill him off. So now Craig literally can't come back because he's dead. That would be the easiest solution. But I think copping out of Benji's death was a really big miss as well. Because I mean, the dude was bleeding out. They had to trank his chest with a pen. I mean, he should have died, honestly. But it's a Mission Impossible movie. A lot of things don't really follow the rules of reality. So that's a shame. Speaking of not really following the rules of reality or gravity, I'm going to go over some of my favorite stunts in this movie, which it's a Mission Impossible movie. It's a Tom Cruise movie. Everything's about the stunts now. That's the big set pieces for a Tom Cruise movie. So we have the bomb defusing. We get quite a few bomb defusings in here. One leading to Luther's death, and then we have one at the end, which kind of teased Dunlow, his wife, and Dagus's death towards the end, but they end up surviving that. I love the devices that they used. They really get more and more creative with these bombs as the installments go on. And I thought this was a really cool one where they have like 8 different, detonation points where they have to basically cut certain wires at a certain time, and they get like a 10-second window to run away, which was really cool. We had the Jeep chase in the tunnel, which is awesome. I love a good car sequence. Me being the big Fast and Furious fan that I am. Tom Cruise did a really good job with that chase scene in the Jeep. It was really, really cool. Very dramatic, very intense. It was really cool to see. Ethan, deep in the ocean, dodging torpedoes was really cool. I love that set piece where he's underwater in the Arctic with the suit, and he goes into the Sebastopol submarine, and he's got to dodge all these torpedoes as the submarine's kind of shifting around in the ocean. That was really cool, very intense. I love the moment where he realizes that he's got to rip the suit off that's essentially saving his life to fit into this tiny torpedo shaft to get out of the submarine. And I heard the audience audibly gasp when he starts ripping off the suit. People were just freaking out that he was basically cutting his lifeline to swim out of this submarine that's sinking deep and deeper into the ocean. That suit that he wears is really, really awesome as well. It's kind of like a protector between the amounts of pressure that builds as you go deeper and deeper in the ocean. I'm not a scientist, but that was pretty easy for me to follow. As you go deeper and deeper into the ocean, more and more pressure builds up, and you're basically crushing your body to where you can't breathe and you suffocate and you're breaking bones and all that. This suit was designed to prevent that. It's to help you go as deep as the suit will allow it before you are crushed to death. So he had a lot of balls to cut that off, but it's Tom Cruise. He'll do what he has to do to complete the mission. So, and then the big set piece that was teased by the trailer was Tom Cruise flying around on the plane and then eventually jumping off of his plane onto Gabriel's plane and crawling around on that midair, which he actually did. In a sense, he wasn't actually, in any danger whatsoever, because they wouldn't have done that stunt if there was any danger to it. But he really did, go up on this plane to a certain height and start crawling around on this thing while it was in the air. Really cool stunts. I love all the hand-to-hand combat that they did during the plane between him and Gabriel. Very intense moment. At any given point, he could have fallen off. But again, this is Tom Cruise, and he's going to survive this, of course. And this is where Gabriel dies in a pretty gruesome death. I was pretty surprised that they kind of committed to this pretty bloody death where he, has a parachute, but then he kind of gets swept by with like the airflow in the air, and he kind of not really decapitates himself, but he gets basically impaled by one of the wings and the plane. It was pretty gruesome. They showed most of it. There was a lot of blood and all that. So very surprised that they committed to that. So those are the big stunt pieces in there. My favorite is probably Ethan dodging those torpedoes in the submarine. It's not the plane sequence because I think it wasn't really as intense for me because they teased it in the trailer, and I hate when they do that. They did the same thing with Dead Reckoning where they teased the bike off the mountain scene. I know that they're part of the trailer is to get you to come to the theater, and you kind of have to showcase the big stunt that's going to be in there. I just really think that it would go better if you kind of hide the big stunt. Similar to like the Fast and Furious franchise does. Not that they're perfect examples of this, but there's been plenty of their installments where they kind of hide that big stunt that everybody walks out of the theater talking about. And I wish Mission Impossible would have followed that a little bit to where we were surprised and shocked by this plane sequence. But I think what I truly like about the Ethan dodging the torpedoes was that we've never really seen anything like that before. It was very unique, very intense, and it was really well done by Tom Cruise and all the stunt team there. So that's my favorite is him in the ocean. The score once again is phenomenal. I love that main Mission Impossible theme. It's like branded into my brain. Absolutely love it. Love the graphics of the final reckoning with the entity behind it. It was really really cool. Um, Last point I want to talk about is the entity itself. Um, I've AI is such a huge thing now. I'm even using it for my podcast now. So I mean, it was a pretty obvious villain to have in a Mission Impossible movie. I just kind of wish it was a little better. Um, in here, we get more of the entity speaking, which I like. I wish we would have gotten more in Dead Reckoning. I wish even in this one, I was hoping we'd get more from him. The biggest scene that we get with the entity is when Ethan goes into that like coffin type thing and he puts the mask on and he's basically shown the future from the entity. That's really all we got from the entity. Otherwise, it's a bunch of people running around talking about the entity. We really don't get the entity speaking other than for that scene. Um, and yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at is I wish we had a little bit more from the entity aside from that one scene, which was really well done. I love Tom Cruise in that scene. That's probably my favorite scene in the movie was him in that coffin like thing, wearing that mask and having the entity pretty much penetrate his mind and showing him the future if the entity does in fact win its mission of basically controlling every nuclear device in the world and holding the world hostage as the ultimate ruler. So, we would have had more from the entity. It's very interesting that we got the AI from Mission Impossible, but I really, really wanted more from him. So, that's pretty much everything I got to say about Mission Impossible. We're gonna scoot over to the rankings, and I'll reveal my ranking of this. It was a great installment, not the best. I was hoping for more, but this is what we got, and I'm really glad that we have 8 decently solid movies. A couple of them are way superior than others, and then unfortunately we have Mission Impossible 2, which everyone would like to forget, but is a key part of this Ethan Hunt story. So check out Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning in theaters now. Eventually, it'll hit Paramount Plus, and then all the streaming services and the physical media will be coming out in the store. We'll see what the box office holds for it. Maybe it'll break even. I just with the way Lilo and Stitch is dominating the box office and how many more films are coming out this summer, Mission Impossible is probably going to get left in the dust. We have How to Train Your Dragon coming out. We have Fantastic Four. We have another Jurassic World movie coming out. We have a John Wick movie coming out this weekend. I just think Mission Impossible is going to get left in the dust. It's probably going to get fast tracked to Paramount Plus and to home streaming services. So it's really unfortunate that this movie is going to be considered a flop, essentially, even though it's one of the biggest movie franchise in history with one of the biggest, if not the biggest stars ever in Tom Cruise. So let's switch over to the ranking segment for Mission Impossible. So I have my Mission Impossible rankings pulled up right here. I'm just going to blaze through these real quick, and then we're going to talk about them. So, number 1, Mission Impossible Fallout. Number 2, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. 3, Mission Impossible 3. 4, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. 5, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. 6, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. 7, Mission Impossible. And then at number 8, Mission Impossible 2. So this was a little bit tough for me. I had a really hard time ranking between Dead Reckoning and The Final Reckoning and Ghost Protocol. My top 3 are pretty much set in stone now. Mission Impossible Fallout, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and Mission Impossible 3. Those are my favorite ones. Fallout is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's easily in my top 10. Absolutely love it. Tom Cruise is phenomenal. The story is phenomenal. The villain is awesome. Everyone's awesome in there. The stunts are incredible. Same thing with 2. Love it. Rogue Nation was my number 1 for the longest time, but then when I did rewatches for the podcast, Fallout eventually beat it. but it was very close, very small margin between Fallout and Rogue Nation. I usually watch those back to back if I'm going to watch any Mission Impossible film on a whim. I just really, really love the story and the actions and the set pieces with Rogue Nation. I love Ferguson in there. She is freaking gorgeous in that yellow dress. Every time I think of Rogue Nation, I think of her walking up those steps with her beautiful yellow dress that she has on, and her connection between Ethan is really incredible. It's a shame that she had to die in Dead Reckoning. It would have been really awesome to get her in this final installment. It would have probably made more sense to save her death for Final Reckoning, but I guess they needed to kind of up the stakes a little bit in Dead Reckoning, which I totally understand from a writing standpoint. It just sucks that she wasn't in this last Mission Impossible film, quote unquote. 4, Ghost Protocol has really shot up in my rankings. I remember when this was one of the ones I've seen the least and didn't really care for. But after rewatching it, it is really, really awesome. I love the Dubai set piece. Love Jeremy Renner in there. Love all the actions set pieces in there. It's really, really cool. So it's pretty solid there at 4. So this is where I kind of ran into some trouble with the Final Reckoning and Dead Reckoning. I wasn't a huge fan of Dead Reckoning, but I did enjoy it a lot, at least versus a lot of these other installments. I had a lot of different thoughts on it during my review, so check out that episode. If you want to listen to my thoughts on Dead Reckoning from last time we were talking about Mission Impossible. But yeah, so I eventually went with the Final Reckoning over Dead Reckoning just because I think the Luther death and the possibility of Benji dying hit me more. I think the plane sequence was a bigger stunt piece for me than, say, the motorcycle one, even though the motorcycle one was pretty cool. And we get the entity talking a little bit more, and we get that awesome scene with him penetrating Ethan's mind, which I really, really love. So those few things were what really set Final Reckoning apart from Dead Reckoning. Even though they're kind of similar to Fallout and Rogue Nation, they're kind of neck and neck with each other. You know, if I go back and rewatch these two as a double feature, it might flip in my rankings just because that's how close they are. And then the first one, I know a lot of people love the first one. I love the first one. It's just when you compare it to all these other ones, it kind of gets lost in the dust. It's not as, impactful or exciting or intense as these newer installments are, but it's still a really good movie. You put up the first Mission Impossible to a lot of the stuff Hollywood's pumping out now. It's gonna beat them every time for me because it's still a really good Tom Cruise movie. It's a really good Mission Impossible movie. It's just comparing it to these ones like Fallout and Rogue Nation. It's just tough. It's a ranking list, so unfortunately, it's got to be towards the bottom just because how the rankings fall. And then Mission Impossible 2, if you've seen it, you know exactly why it's at the bottom of the list. It's one of those movies that got annihilated because of the writer's strike. It's similar reason why, Quantum of Solace has been branded the worst Daniel Craig Bond movie because of the writing. It's the same thing with Mission Impossible 2. Really bad writing. Tom Cruise is a great actor, but he wasn't as great as he could have been in that one. The plot was really bland and not exciting at all. There wasn't really any cool stunts aside from maybe the playing chicken with the motorcycles at the end. And it was way too many masks being thrown around. So just a lot of things went wrong with that one, and that's why it's at the bottom. So I'm going to be posting this list as well as the Disney live action rankings on all the social media pages. So check that out. All you got to do is search for Cinematic Reviews, and you can find that page with all my rankings and every other posting that I do for the show. One final, I guess, ranking we can do with kind of capping off this double header, and that is Lilo and Stitch versus The Final Reckoning. I know the box office speaks for itself, but I want to make my choice here on the show. I prefer Lilo and Stitch over The Final Reckoning. Lilo and Stitch is actually in the running for my movie of the year when I reveal the Cinematic Awards for 2025. and it hurts me to say because I love Tom Cruise, love Mission Impossible. Um, Honestly, with the lineup that we have coming up with movies of the rest of the year, it's very possible Final Reckoning does not make my top 5 for the year. It might not even make my top 10, which really pains me because I really wanted this to be like my movie of the year. Uh, but I'm going to go with Lilo and Stitch to take over uh, the Final Reckoning, which is crazy, but I just really love that movie. Um, as you probably, if you've seen my episode of that, um, I had a lot of good things to say, very small amount of bad things to say about it. So yeah, in this fight between Tom Cruise and Stitch, Stitch wins out this year. Um, so we're at 1-1. I guess we'll see if when that Stitch sequel comes out, if Tom Cruise will release a movie the same weekend as this one. So maybe we can end this tiebreaker. But in the Stitch versus Tom Cruise, it is now 1-1 tie. So let's hope for another Stitch versus Tom Cruise weekend so that we can break this tie. Reminder, you can watch this show on youtube.com/thecinemacviews, and you can also listen to the audio versions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. So with that, this episode will self destruct in 5 seconds. Later, everyone.